The dog's scream split the morning silence like a gunshot. Then came the woman's cry, sharp, desperate, cut short by the sound of flesh striking flesh. Thaddeus Brennan froze on his mother's back porch coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Steam curled into the cold Virginia air, November frost clinging to the wooden railings. 5:47 in the morning. The sun hadn't cleared the tree line yet. The world was still gray, suspended between night and day. Through the gap in the hedge separating the properties, he saw it. A man in a $4,000 suit kicking a small beagle. The dog yelped again, trying to scramble away on the wet grass, paws slipping. A young woman rushed forward, arms outstretched to shield the animal. The man's hand connected with her face. She crumpled to the ground like a marionette with cut strings. "Pick up that filthy animal," the man said. His voice carried clearly in the morning stillness. Cultured, calm. The kind of voice that signed checks and shook hands with senators. "Before I put it down permanently." At Tad's feet, Maverick growled, low, continuous, a sound that came from somewhere deep in the German shepherd's chest. The dog's amber eyes were locked on the scene beyond the hedge, his body rigid as steel cable. 75 pounds of trained military working dog, every muscle coiled and ready. Tad's hand dropped to Maverick's collar. His fingers found the familiar rough texture, the worn leather that had been through 3 deployments and 100 combat missions. "Easy," he whispered. But he didn't mean it. Nothing about this was easy. The woman scrambled to her feet. Blood trickled from her split lip, dark against her pale skin. She gathered the whimpering beagle into her arms, cradling it against her chest like a child. "I'm sorry, Mr. Coldwell," she said, her voice shook. French accent soft and lilting, even through the fear. She didn't mean to bark. She was scared of the delivery truck. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The silver-haired man adjusted his cufflinks. Unhurried. Casual. As if he hadn't just struck a woman half his size. "Your apologies mean nothing, Celeste." His voice was ice wrapped in silk. Tad had heard that tone before. In interrogation rooms. In the voices of men who believed their money made them untouchable. "That animal has one more chance," Coldwell continued. "One. Do you understand what happens after that?" "Yes, sir." "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." She raised her eyes. Tad saw it then. The practiced emptiness. The careful blankness designed to survive. He had seen that look on the faces of prisoners. On the faces of people who had learned that showing emotion invited punishment. "If that dog makes another sound when we have guests," Coldwell said, stepping closer, "I will handle the problem myself, permanently." He paused. "And Celeste." "Yes, sir." "Clean yourself up. You look pathetic." He turned and walked back toward the mansion. A sprawling estate of white columns and manicured lawns, the kind of house that appeared in Southern Living magazine. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Final, absolute. The woman stood motionless until he disappeared. Then her shoulders collapsed. She buried her face in the dog's fur and wept. Silently, her whole body shaking with sobs she couldn't afford to release. Tad's jaw clenched. His teeth ached from the pressure. Maverick whined softly, looking up at him with those knowing amber eyes that had seen too much. The question was clear in the dog's gaze. "Why aren't we moving?" "I know, boy," Tad breathed. "I know." But he didn't move. Not yet. Because this wasn't Afghanistan. This wasn't Syria. This was Ridgemont, Virginia. There were laws here, procedures, systems designed to handle exactly this kind of situation. And those systems, a voice whispered in the back of his mind, were failing her. Tad stood there long after the woman had carried her dog back inside. Long after the sun had finally cleared the trees and burned off the morning fog. Long after his coffee had gone cold. He stood there and wondered what kind of man he had become. The kind who saw evil and documented it, or the kind who saw evil and did something about it. 12 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him the difference. Sometimes it cost lives. 3 weeks earlier, Thaddeus Brennan had arrived in Ridgemont with nothing but a duffel bag, a German shepherd, and a hollowed-out feeling where his purpose used to live. His mother had died 2 months ago. Cancer. Fast and merciless, the kind that gave no warning and accepted no appeals. He had been on deployment when she passed, received the news via satellite phone in a room that smelled like diesel fuel and gunpowder, and the particular kind of fear that clings to men who know they might not see morning. By the time he made it stateside, she was already in the ground. The house she left him was modest. White clapboard siding, wraparound porch, sagging slightly on the east corner, half an acre of overgrown garden that backed up against the most expensive estate in the county. She had lived here alone for 15 years after his father's heart attack took him at 53. She had died here alone while her son was 8,000 miles away doing what he thought mattered. Now Tad walked through rooms that still smelled like her perfume, lavender and something else, something that made his chest tight and his eyes burn. He touched the kitchen counter where she had rolled out pie dough, ran his fingers along the banisters she had polished every Saturday morning without fail. 12 years, he said to Maverick. The dog sat at his feet, ears perked forward, head tilted in that way that made it look like he understood every word. 12 years and I wasn't here when she needed me. Maverick pressed his nose against Tad's palm. The dog's breath was warm, real, a reminder that some things endured. Yeah, Tad said, I know, doesn't help. He was 38 years old. Short dark hair buzzed, military neat, though he had no requirement to keep it that way anymore. Beard trimmed close, showing gray at the temples that hadn't been there 3 years ago. Shoulders broad but frame lean, the kind of physique built by carrying 80-pound packs through mountain passes not sculpted in gyms. His terminal leave had started 3 weeks ago. In 60 days, he had to decide, re-enlist or walk away. Right now, walking away felt like the only option that made sense. His last deployment had ended badly. An extraction in Helmand province that went sideways when the intelligence turned out to be 18 hours old. 2 teammates injured, one critically. A village elder caught in crossfire because Tad had made the call to engage instead of retreat. You made the right call, his commanding officer had said afterward, in a debriefing room that was too cold and smelled like industrial cleaner. Sometimes right calls have wrong outcomes. Then why does it feel like I got them killed? Tad hadn't asked the question aloud. Didn't need to. The answer was in the CO's eyes. The same answer Tad saw in his own mirror every morning. The Navy had offered him a commendation. He had asked for leave instead. Now he was here, in his dead mother's house, trying to figure out who Thaddeus Brennan was when he wasn't carrying a weapon and following orders, and believing that what he did mattered in some grand scheme he couldn't see but had to trust existed. The sound of breaking glass shattered his thoughts. He looked up. Through the kitchen window, he could see movement at the Coldwell estate. The young woman carrying garbage bags to the side of the house. One slipped from her hands. Glass shattered across the flagstones. She dropped to her knees immediately, started picking up the pieces with her bare hands. Fast, frantic, like she had seconds before something terrible happened. The back door of the mansion flew open. Harrison Coldwell emerged. Even from this distance, Tad could see his face. Red, furious. The woman's hands moved faster. Blood dripped from her fingers where the glass had cut her. She didn't seem to notice. Coldwell grabbed her by the hair, yanked her to her feet. His mouth moved. Tad couldn't hear the words, but he could read the body language. Rage, control, the particular violence of men who had never been told no. Then Coldwell backhanded her across the face. She fell, didn't get up, just stayed on the ground, making herself small, waiting for it to be over. And Maverick went insane. The shepherd lunged at the back door, barking with an intensity Tad had only heard in combat. Not the alert bark he used for strangers, the warning bark that meant threat. That meant enemy. That meant someone is going to die if you don't let me protect. Maverick down, Tad commanded, his voice sharp, absolute. The dog dropped, but the warning rumble never stopped. A continuous vibration of rage and protective instinct that ran through every muscle in the shepherd's body. Tad watched Coldwell walk back inside, watched the woman pull herself to her feet, watched her finish cleaning up the glass with bleeding hands. And he made a decision. After the woman disappeared back inside, Tad forced himself to turn away from the window. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Maverick paced in tight circles at his feet, unable to settle every instinct, screaming that something was wrong. We can't just charge in there, Tad said, speaking to the dog, speaking to himself. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't. He stopped, took a breath, let it out slow. They didn't know, but they could find out. Inside, Tad opened his laptop. An old Dell that took 47 seconds to boot up the fan, wheezing like an asthmatic. He had bought it used 3 years ago for $200 and never bothered to upgrade. It worked. That was enough. His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Muscle memory from a different life. Harrison Coldwell, Ridgemont, Virginia. The search results loaded, page after page of carefully curated success. Real estate developer, philanthropist, major donor to the sheriff's re-election campaign, board member of Ridgemont General Hospital, supporter of the local children's charity. Photographs showed a handsome older man shaking hands with politicians, cutting ribbons at community events, smiling beside his elegant wife at fundraising galas. A pillar of the community, one article called him. A man who gives back. Tad scrolled deeper. Business dealings, property acquisitions. A pattern emerged, subtle but unmistakable. Coldwell specialized in buying distressed properties, often from immigrant families facing foreclosure. He hired foreign workers for his various enterprises, sponsored their visas, provided housing. Generous employer, another article said. Tad thought about the woman's split lip, the terror in her eyes, the way she had apologized even as her hands bled. Generous, he muttered. Right. He searched for employees, household staff, found nothing official. No public records of who worked inside that mansion. But he did find something else. A 5-year-old article in the local newspaper. 3 paragraphs buried on page 7. A domestic disturbance at the Coldwell estate. Police were called, no charges filed. The matter was described as a misunderstanding involving a former employee who had personal issues. The employee's name wasn't mentioned, just a foreign national who has since returned to her home country. Tad leaned back in his chair. Maverick rested his chin on Tad's knee, watching him with those amber eyes that seemed to see through walls. What do you think, boy, coincidence? The shepherd's hackles rose slightly. His opinion on coincidences was clear. Yeah, Tad said, me neither. He kept searching, found 2 more brief mentions. 8 years ago, a worker at one of Coldwell's properties returned home after contract completion. 6 years ago, another. The language was always the same, vague, sanitized, leaving no trail to follow. Tad opened a new tab, searched for immigrant support services in Ridgemont, found a small ministry attached to St. Michael's Catholic Church on Main Street. He looked at Maverick. You up for a walk, boy? The dog was already at the door. The next morning, Tad positioned himself on the back porch with a clear sightline to the Coldwell property. He told himself he was just having coffee, just getting fresh air. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. At 5:47 movement, the young woman emerged from a side door carrying cleaning supplies. She moved quickly, efficiently, starting with the patio furniture, working her way across the terrace with the practiced rhythm of someone who had done this 1,000 times. By 6:15, she had swept the entire back area. At 6:30, an older woman appeared. Blonde, expensively dressed, even at this hour, silk robe that probably cost more than Tad's monthly disability check. She said something to the young woman that Tad couldn't hear. The young woman nodded rapidly, her posture shrinking, making herself smaller. The blonde woman gestured sharply toward the main house. The young woman hurried inside, leaving her supplies where they lay. At 7 o'clock, she reappeared carrying a breakfast tray. Served the blonde woman on the terrace. Stood at attention while the woman ate, hands clasped in front of her, eyes down. When a piece of toast was waved dismissively, the young woman took the tray and retreated. Tad watched for 3 hours. In that time, the young woman never stopped moving, never sat down, never ate. The small beagle was kept in the yard near a garden shed. No food bowl visible, no water. The dog lay in a patch of shade tail, occasionally thumping, hopefully, when the young woman passed nearby. But the woman never stopped to pet her, never even looked at her. She's not allowed to, Tad realized, speaking aloud to the empty porch. She's not allowed to show affection to her own dog. At noon, Harrison Coldwell emerged from the house, impeccable in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been made for him, which it probably had. He walked to where the young woman was scrubbing the patio stones on her hands and knees. Stand up! She scrambled to her feet. Water dripped from her hands. The Prescotts are coming for dinner Saturday, Coldwell said. Conversational, like he was discussing the weather. I expect this house to be perfect. Yes, Mr. Coldwell. And the dog stays in the shed during the event. I don't want Mrs. Prescott's allergies aggravated. The woman's face flickered. Just for a second. Sir, the shed doesn't have ventilation. If she's locked in there for hours. Are you questioning me? Silence, then barely audible, no, sir. Good, because I've been very patient, Celeste, very generous. He stepped closer. Most employers wouldn't tolerate a pet at all. Most employers wouldn't put up with the noise, the mess, the liability. He was close enough now that Tad could see the woman trembling. Most employers, Coldwell continued, his voice dropping, would have sent you back to France years ago. And we both know what happens to your father if that happens, don't we? Yes, sir. So the dog stays in the shed, and you will make sure this house is perfect. And you will smile at our guests like you are the happiest, most grateful girl in Virginia. He paused. Because you are grateful, aren't you, Celeste? Yes, sir, I'm very grateful. I can't hear you, Todd. I'm very grateful, Mr. Coldwell. He patted her cheek, the same cheek he had struck the day before. Good girl. He walked away, disappeared back into the house. Celeste stood motionless for a long moment. Then she sank back to her knees and resumed scrubbing. Her movements were mechanical, her face empty. But Tad saw the tears that fell onto the wet stones, saw the way her hands shook. This isn't just abuse, he thought. This is captivity. That afternoon, Tad drove into town. Ridgemont was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where family names went back 6 generations, where the biggest scandal in recent memory was when the mayor's son got caught with marijuana in the high school parking lot. He parked on Main Street, walked into the hardware store with no particular plan. The owner, a man in his 70s with a name tag that read Earl, looked up from behind the counter. "Help you find something?" "Just moved into Margaret Brennan's place," Tad said. "I'm her son." Earl's face softened. "Margaret's boy. Heard you were coming. Navy, right?" "SEAL, just retired." "Thank you for your service." Earl said it like he meant it, like the words cost him something. "Your mother was a fine woman. Real sorry for your loss." "Thank you." They talked about the house, about repairs Tad would need to make before winter, about the best place to buy lumber, and whether the plumber on Oak Street was still any good. Easy conversation, the kind that oiled the wheels of small-town life. Then Tad said, casual as he could manage, "Big place next door, the Coldwell estate." Earl's expression shifted. Something careful slid behind his eyes. "That's right, been there 20 years. Since Harrison bought the old Pemberton property. Seems like a good neighbor to have, successful guy." "Harrison Coldwell is a pillar of this community," Earl said. The words sounded rehearsed. "Does a lot of good, employs a lot of people. I saw he has household staff, foreign workers." "Wouldn't know about that." Earl turned back to his inventory sheet. Subject closed. "You need anything else?" Tad bought a hammer he didn't need and left. He tried the diner next, then the library. Same response everywhere. Harrison Coldwell was a pillar, a philanthropist, a good man. No one mentioned household staff. No one mentioned a young Frenchwoman with bruises on her arms. At the library, Tad found old editions of the local newspaper on microfiche, a machine from 1987 that groaned like it was dying. He searched for any mention of the Coldwell estate, any hint of trouble. There were 3 incidents. The first was the domestic disturbance he had already found 5 years ago, quickly dismissed. The second was older, 8 years ago, a brief notice that a worker at one of Coldwell's properties had been returned to her home country after failing to fulfill her employment obligations. No name, no details. The third was even older. 11 years ago, a single sentence in the police blotter, "Welfare check requested at Coldwell residence, no action needed." Returned to her home country, Tad thought, or disposed of. On Main Street, between the barbershop and an antique store that had been going out of business for as long as Tad could remember, there was a small church, St. Michael's Catholic. White steeple, red door parking lot that needed repaving. And beside the church, a modest brick building with a hand-painted sign, Immigrant Support Ministry. Pastor Elijah Harding, director. Tad sat in his truck across the street for 10 minutes, watching. Through the window, he could see a man in clerical clothing talking to a Hispanic family. The man was in his 60s, gray hair and weathered face that suggested he had heard every story and judged none. Tad made his decision, got out of the truck. Maverick followed at his heel, close and alert. He pushed open the door. A bell chimed overhead. Pastor Elijah Harding looked up. His eyes were sharp, assessing, but his smile was warm. "Welcome," he said. "Can I help you?" "I hope so, Pastor." The Hispanic family gathered their things and departed with murmured thanks. Harding gestured to a worn wooden chair. "Please sit. You look like a man carrying a heavy weight." Tad sat. Maverick settled at his feet, resting his chin on Tad's boot. "Beautiful dog," Harding observed. "Military mom." "Yes, sir, both of us." "I thought so. You have the bearing." The pastor folded his hands on his desk, papers and files stacked in careful piles, a life spent organizing other people's chaos. "Now, what brings you to me?" Tad hesitated. 12 years of operations had taught him to compartmentalize information, to reveal only what was necessary, but something about this man made him want to tell the truth. "I moved into my mother's house 3 days ago," Tad began. "The property backs up against the Coldwell estate." Harding's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, a tension, a weariness. "Go on." "I've seen things, Pastor. A young woman who works there. I think she's being abused. Badly. And I don't think she can leave." The silence stretched. Then Harding exhaled slowly, like a man releasing a breath he had held for years. Her name is Celeste Moreau, he said quietly. And you're right. She can't leave. You know her. She came to me 8 months ago, terrified, showed me bruises covering her arms, her back, told me things that... He stopped, composed himself. She begged for help. What did you do? I contacted the authorities, filed reports, made calls. Harding's voice carried an edge of old anger. And nothing happened. Harrison Coldwell is untouchable in this county. He funds the sheriff's campaign. He sits on the hospital board. He's photographed with the governor twice a year. The pastor shook his head. A domestic worker with an expired visa against a man like that. No one listened. Her visa is expired. That's how he controls her. He sponsored her H-1B work visa 4 years ago. When it lapsed, he didn't renew it. Now she's undocumented, which means if she goes to the police, she risks deportation. Harding's jaw tightened. And if she's deported, he's told her what will happen to her family. Tad felt something cold settle in his stomach. He threatened her family. Her father, Jean-Luc Moreau, lives in Marseille, 71 years old, stage 3 Parkinson's disease. Coldwell has connections in France through his business dealings. He's made it very clear that accidents can happen, that the French healthcare system can be very slow to respond to emergencies. Jesus. He keeps her passport locked away, Harding continued. Keeps her phone, keeps her isolated. She has no money, no papers, no one to turn to. She's a prisoner in everything but name. There has to be something, Tad said. Some law, some agency. There are laws against human trafficking, Harding agreed, but proving it requires evidence, testimony, cooperation from victims who are too frightened to speak. He paused. Celeste won't testify. She's convinced that Coldwell will destroy her and everyone she loves. Then we gather evidence without her. The pastor studied him for a long moment. You're serious. Pastor, I spent 12 years fighting enemies overseas. I watched people suffer because no one with power gave a damn about them. Tad met Harding's gaze steadily. I'm done watching. Harding was quiet. Then slowly, deliberately, he reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a thin manila folder. I've been collecting information on Harrison Coldwell for 8 years, he said, hoping someday someone would come who could use it. He slid the folder across the desk. God works in mysterious ways, my son. Perhaps he sent you. Tad opened the folder. Inside were handwritten notes, photocopies of newspaper clippings, names and dates and fragments of testimony, and 3 photographs. The first showed a woman with blonde hair and sad eyes. Handwritten caption, Ingrid Larsen, Denmark, departed 2019. The second showed a woman with dark hair and a cautious smile. Katerina Volkov, Russia, departed 2021. The third showed a woman with olive skin and tired features. Alessandra Romano, Italy, departed 2023. 3 women before Celeste, Harding said quietly. All H-1B visa domestic workers, all employed by Harrison Coldwell. All disappeared after their visas expired and they started asking questions. Disappeared how? Official records say they were returned to their home countries. Voluntary departures. Harding's voice was flat, but none of their families have heard from them. None of their passports were scanned at any international airport. They simply vanished. Tad stared at the photographs. 3 faces, 3 lives, 3 ghosts. Celeste is the 4th, Harding said, and I think she's about to become the 5th to disappear. What makes you think that? Because 2 days ago I saw Harrison Coldwell at the hardware store, buying rope and tarps and lime. The pastor's hands were shaking now. The kind of supplies you need if you're planning to bury something deep. The folder suddenly felt very heavy in Tad's hands. How many others? He asked. How many women has he done this to? Harding's face aged 10 years in the span of a breath. These are just the ones I know about, he said quietly. Just the ones who made it to me before they vanished. There could be more. Probably are more. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were wet. I'm a man of God, Mr. Brennan. I'm supposed to have faith. Supposed to believe that justice will prevail. That the wicked will be punished. His voice cracked. But sometimes I wonder if God is watching this town at all. Because if he is, I don't understand why he allows a monster like Harrison Coldwell to thrive. Tad stood. Maverick rose with him. Maybe he's not allowing it anymore. What are you going to do? I'm going to watch. I'm going to document. And when I have enough, Tad looked down at the 3 photographs. 3 women who had trusted the wrong man. 3 women who had believed in America's promise and found a nightmare instead. When I have enough, I'm going to make sure Harrison Coldwell never hurts anyone again. Harding nodded slowly. Be careful, son. He's not a man who loses gracefully. Neither am I. Tad walked out into the fading afternoon light, the folder under his arm, Maverick at his heel, and for the first time since his last deployment, ended in chaos and blood and a decision that would haunt him forever. Thaddeus Brennan felt something he thought he had lost. Purpose. That night, Tad sat on his mother's back porch, watching the lights of the Coldwell mansion through the trees. A single window on the ground floor remained lit. The kitchen, he guessed, where Celeste was probably still cleaning, still serving, still surviving one moment at a time. His phone buzzed, a text from an old teammate checking in. Hey brother, how's civilian life treating you? Tad stared at the message for a long moment, then typed his reply. Ask me again in a month. He set the phone down and returned his gaze to the window. Somewhere in that house, Celeste Moreau was fighting to survive another day. She didn't know that someone was watching. She didn't know that help was coming. But Tad knew, and he wasn't going to look away. Maverick settled at his feet. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the distant mansion, as if he too understood that the real mission had just begun. Another buzz, different pattern, not his regular text tone, an unknown number. Tad picked up the phone, read the message that changed everything. This is Celeste. Pastor Harding gave me your number. I need help, but I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. I can help, but I need you to trust me. 3 minutes passed, 4, 5. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared, appeared again. Then Anna tried to run. Sheriff brushed her back. I found her necklace in the garden shed. She never came back alive. Tad's blood ran cold. Anna. Ingrid Larson. I called her Anna. We were friends, the only friend I had. A pause, then, there are bodies in the mountains, Mr. Brennan. He showed me pictures once when I asked too many questions, to remind me what happens to girls who forget their place. Tad looked at Maverick. The dog was staring at him, waiting. Can you meet me tomorrow, Tad typed. Same time you collect branches, at the fence line. The reply came faster this time. If he catches me talking to you, he'll kill Pippa. He'll hurt my father. Please understand. He won't catch you, I promise. Long pause, then. Okay, tomorrow, 3 p.m. Please don't make me regret this. Tad set the phone down. His hands were steady. His mind was already working through scenarios. Surveillance patterns, documentation protocols, evidence collection. This wasn't Afghanistan, this wasn't Syria, but it was a war zone all the same. The enemy wore a suit instead of a uniform, carried a checkbook instead of a rifle. But he was just as dangerous, just as willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way. And somewhere in that mansion, 3 women had already learned that lesson, had paid for it with their lives. Celeste would not be the 4th. Tad stood, walked to the edge of the porch where the yard met the fence line. From here, he could see directly into the Coldwell property. Could see the garden shed where Ingrid's necklace had been found. Could see the patio where Celeste scrubbed stones until her hands bled. Tomorrow she would tell him everything, would give him the details he needed to build a case that even Harrison Coldwell's money couldn't buy off. Tomorrow the mission would truly begin. But tonight, Tad allowed himself to stand in the darkness and remember what it felt like to have a purpose. To be more than just a broken veteran trying to make sense of a life that no longer fit. Tonight he was a guardian again, a protector, a man who stood between the innocent and the wolves. Maverick pressed against his leg, the dog's warmth solid and real in the November cold. We're going to end this, boy, Tad said quietly, whatever it takes. The mansion lights blazed in the distance, a monument to wealth and power and the kind of evil that hid behind respectability. But evil was never as strong as it thought it was. Tad had learned that in a dozen countries across 3 continents, had seen monsters fall when good men finally stopped looking away. Harrison Coldwell didn't know it yet, but his reign of terror was about to end. That morning when Maverick first growled had been a beginning, not an ending. And Thaddeus Brennan never left a mission unfinished. Not in Helmand Province, not in Ridgemont, Virginia, not ever. The fence line at 3 o'clock in the afternoon looked different than it had at dawn. Sunlight filtered through the bare November branches, creating shadows that shifted and danced across the dead grass. Tad positioned himself carefully angled so that anyone watching from the main house would see only his back. A man inspecting storm damage. Nothing suspicious, nothing that would trigger alarms. Maverick sat beside him, alert but calm. The dog had learned patience in 100 stakeouts across 3 continents. He knew how to wait, How to watch without seeming to watch. At 3:07, Celeste appeared. She moved through the trees with the same efficiency Tad had observed for days now. Basket in hand, gathering fallen branches, working her way closer to the property boundary. Her eyes darted constantly toward the mansion. Checking. Calculating. The movements of someone who had learned that survival meant constant vigilance. When she was close enough, she spoke without looking at him. "Don't look at me." Her voice was barely above a whisper, French accent soft and careful. "Keep your eyes forward. He has cameras everywhere." "I know," Tad said. He kept his gaze on the fence post in front of him, examining it like he was checking for rot. "I've been watching." "Then you know what he does, what he's capable of." "I know enough. Tell me the rest." Celeste bent to pick up a branch. Her hands were shaking. "I came here 4 years ago, 2020. He sponsored my visa, said he needed household help, said he would pay well and I could send money home to my father." She paused. "The first year was fine. Hard work but fair. Then my visa expired. He didn't renew it. He told me he had filed the paperwork, that it was processing, that these things take time." Her voice cracked slightly. "Then one day he showed me the truth. The papers were never filed. I was undocumented, illegal, and he said I owed him. How much? $67,000. The number came out flat, dead, like she had said it so many times it had lost meaning. Legal fees that were never paid, housing, food, utilities, medical care. Medical care for what? Silence, then for when he hurts me." Tad's jaw clenched. He forced himself to keep his voice level. "How does the debt work?" "It only grows. Last month I owed $63,000. This month, $67,000. He adds charges for things I didn't know I was paying for. Electricity, water, clothing, the food Pippa eats." Her voice dropped. "Every time he hits me, he charges me medical fees for the injuries he caused." "Your father in France. He knows about this." "No." The word came out sharp, terrified. "He can never know. He's 71, Mr. Brennan. Parkinson's disease stage 3. He thinks I'm living the American dream, working for a kind family, saving money." Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "If he knew the truth, it would kill him. And if he tried to help me, Mr. Coldwell would make sure he had an accident. Coldwell threatened him directly. He showed me photographs. My father's apartment building in Marseille, the cafe where he has breakfast every morning, the pharmacy where he picks up his medications." She was crying now, silent tears that she couldn't wipe away because her hands were full of branches and looking away from her work would be suspicious. "He said accidents happen all the time to old men with tremors. Falls downstairs. Wrong medications dispensed. So easy to arrange from so far away." Tad felt rage building in his chest. The kind of cold, focused anger that had gotten him through firefights and extractions and moments when the right decision meant people died. "What happened to the others, Ingrid, Katerina, Alessandra?" Celeste's breath hitched. "Anna was my friend, Ingrid, but I called her Anna. She was here when I arrived. Taught me how to survive, how to be invisible." She bent for another branch, moving closer to the fence. 2 years ago, she tried to escape, made it to the bus station. He found her in 47 minutes. Sheriff Hutchins brought her back personally, said she was a flight risk, said she was lucky, Mr. Coldwell wasn't pressing charges. And then I never saw her again." Celeste's voice was hollow. "He told me she was deported, but I found her necklace in the garden shed a week later. A silver cross her grandmother gave her. She would never have left it behind. Never." "What about Katerina and Alessandra?" "Katerina disappeared 6 months after Anna. Same pattern. Tried to leave, came back, vanished. She was close enough now that Tad could see the bruises on her wrists. Old ones, yellow and fading. Newer ones, purple and fresh. Alessandra was different. She didn't try to run, just started asking too many questions. Where did Anna go? Why won't you let me call my family? One day she was here, the next day gone. And you think they're dead. I know they're dead. Celeste's voice was steady now, certain. Because he showed me, 6 months ago when I asked if I could have a phone to call my father. He took me to his office, opened his laptop, showed me photographs. Tad's blood ran cold. Photographs of what? Of what happens to girls who forget their place. She was shaking badly now, barely holding the basket. I can't tell you what I saw, I can't. But they're in the mountains, Mr. Brennan. Both of them. And if I don't do exactly what he says, I'll be there too. Tad waited. Let her breathe. Let her find her composure. There's more, Celeste said finally. He doesn't always kill them. Sometimes he sells them. Sells them to his business partners, men like him, real estate developers in other cities. Her voice was mechanical now, reciting facts to keep from feeling them. Baltimore, Richmond, Charlotte, Raleigh. When a woman becomes too much trouble here, he transfers her like a business asset. How many? I don't know, but I've heard him on the phone talking about transfers and inventory and quality control, like we're products, not people. The dog's body tensed beside Tad. A warning rumble vibrated through the shepherd's throat. Saturday night, Celeste said. There's a fundraiser, big donors, politicians. His wife wants everything perfect. He'll be distracted. What are you saying? I'm saying that's when his guard will be down. That's when you might have a chance to find proof. She paused. In his office, second floor east wing, there's a safe behind a painting of a horse. Code is 9174. How do you know the code? Because I clean that office. Because he's careless when he thinks I'm too stupid to pay attention. For the first time, there was steel in her voice. The safe has a ledger, names, dates, payments. Everything. Anna told me about it before she disappeared. She said it was enough to put him away for life. Tad's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this? Celeste bent to pick up the last branch in her area. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Because I'm tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching Pippa suffer because of my mistakes. Tired of waiting to become another woman who disappeared. She straightened. If you're really going to do this, Saturday is your only chance. What happens after the fundraiser? He's taking me to his property in the mountains. Says it's for cleaning the cabin before winter. Her voice dropped. But I know what it means. I've become too much trouble. Too aware. I'm about to disappear like the others. The words hit Tad like a physical blow. Saturday, he repeated. I'll be ready. Celeste walked away without another word, but at the edge of the trees she paused, didn't turn around, just stood there for a moment, shoulders trembling. The dog, she said quietly. Pippa, whatever happens to me, please don't let him hurt her. Then she was gone. Tad stood motionless for a long time after she left. Maverick pressed against his legs, solid and warm. A reminder that he wasn't alone in this, that some battles were worth fighting even when the odds were impossible. 3 days. They had 3 days to build a case that would take down one of the most connected men in the county. 3 days to gather evidence that would hold up in federal court. 3 days to save a woman's life. Tad pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. It rang 4 times, then a woman's voice, sharp and professional. Finch. Agent Finch, this is Thaddeus Brennan. We met at the Joint Task Force briefing in Kabul, 2021. Silence, then recognition. Chief Brennan, I remember. You're the one who found that trafficking operation running through the supply contractors. A pause. I heard you retired. What can I do for you? I've got a situation, domestic trafficking, Virginia, wealthy perpetrator with law enforcement in his pocket, multiple victims, at least 2 possible homicides. He heard typing on the other end. I'm listening. Tad told her everything. Celeste's story, the 3 women who disappeared, the 4 business associates running similar operations across 4 states, the ledger in the safe that documented it all. When he finished, Finch was quiet for a long moment. How solid is your source? She asked finally. Solid. She's one of the victims. Been captive 4 years. Will she testify? If she survives long enough. More typing. Okay, here's what I need. Documentary evidence. The ledger you mentioned. Financial records. Anything that proves debt bondage, forced labor, human trafficking. Finch's voice was all business now. Without hard evidence, it is her word against a wealthy philanthropist. That case dies in court. I can get you the evidence. How? Saturday night, fundraiser at his house. I'm going in. Jesus Christ, Brennan. That's breaking and entering. Evidence obtained illegally is inadmissible. Not if you get your own warrant based on victim testimony. Silence. Then something that might have been admiration in Finch's voice. You've thought this through. I've had time. All right, get me the evidence. Photograph everything. Don't remove anything. And Brennan, she paused. Be careful. Men like this don't go down easy. They have resources, connections. They fight back. So do I. He ended the call and looked at Maverick. The dog was staring at him with those amber eyes that had seen everything and judged nothing. 3 days, boy, Tad said quietly. We have 3 days to get this right. The dog's tail thumped once against the ground. Ready. Saturday came too fast and not fast enough. Tad spent Friday night preparing, going over the layout of the Coldwell mansion he had memorized from property records, checking the camera positions he had observed during days of surveillance, packing the tools he would need, a compact camera designed for low-light photography, lockpicks he wasn't supposed to own but had acquired during a black operation in Syria, gloves, a small flashlight with a red filter. He felt the familiar pre-mission calm settling over him, the place where fear couldn't reach, where doubt evaporated and there was only the objective and the steps required to achieve it. Maverick watched from the corner of the room, head on his paws. The dog knew this mood. Had seen Tad slip into it 100 times before, raids and extractions and operations that lived in classified files no one would read for 30 years. At 9:15 Saturday night, Tad moved. He crossed his property in darkness, Maverick at his heel. The fundraiser was in full swing. He could hear music and laughter drifting from the Coldwell mansion, see the lights blazing through windows, count the cars in the circular driveway, Mercedes, Lexus, Audi, Tesla. The vehicles of people who made decisions that affected thousands of lives and slept well doing it. He reached the service entrance Celeste had described, a plain door on the east side of the house, half hidden by landscaping. He tried the code she had given him, 9174. The lock clicked. The door opened. Tad slipped inside. The service corridor was narrow and utilitarian. White walls, fluorescent lighting, the smell of cleaning products and expensive food. He moved quickly, silent on rubber-soled boots, following the mental map in his head. Second floor, east wing. He found the back stairs, climbed them one at a time, pausing at each landing to listen. Voices filtered up from the main level. Conversation and clinking glasses and the practiced laughter of people networking at fundraisers. Second floor. The hallway was dim. Plush carpet absorbed his footsteps. Oil paintings on the walls. Hunting scenes, pastoral landscapes, the requisite ancestors staring out with stern faces. He found Coldwell's office. The door was locked, electronic deadbolt with a keypad. Tad pulled out the bypass device, held it against the lock, counted seconds, 4, 5, 6. The lock clicked. He was in. The office was exactly what he expected. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture walls lined with photographs of Coldwell shaking hands with senators and governors and men whose faces appeared on cable news. A massive desk dominated the center of the room. Behind it, a painting of a horse. Thoroughbred, probably worth more than Tad's truck. He lifted the painting aside. The safe was a Hallbrook 3000, high-end residential model, supposedly uncrackable. Tad had cracked 3 of these in Damascus. He tried the code Celeste had provided, 9174. Nothing. His pulse quickened. Had Coldwell changed it? Had Celeste remembered wrong? Then he realized she had given him the service entrance code. The safe might be different. He thought about her description. She had learned it by watching, by paying attention. Tad tried the reverse, 4719. The safe swung open. Inside was everything Celeste had promised and more. A leather-bound ledger filled with handwritten entries, neat columns of names and numbers. Ingrid Larson, 72,000 outstanding. Katerina Volkov, 58,000 outstanding. Alessandra Romano, 63,000 outstanding. Celeste Moreau, 67,000 outstanding. Each entry meticulously documented the fictional debt that bound each woman to servitude, housing costs that were inflated by 300%, legal fees for paperwork that was never filed, medical charges for injuries Coldwell himself inflicted. But that wasn't all. There were passports, 4 of them, current, confiscated. The women's faces staring out from official pages, frozen in the moment before they understood what kind of trap they had walked into. A folder labeled transfers, inside contracts, legal documents transferring employment of domestic workers to associates in Baltimore, Richmond, Charlotte, Raleigh, dates and locations and amounts paid, like bills of sale for livestock. And at the bottom of the safe, a small USB drive. Tad plugged it into his phone. The files loaded slowly. Spreadsheets, 14 names. Financial records tracking not just the 4 women he knew about, but 10 others. A network spanning 4 states and going back 12 years. His hands were steady as he photographed everything. Wide shots showing context, close-ups of specific entries, the ledger pages, the passports, the transfer contracts. He was copying the last file when he heard footsteps in the hallway. He froze. The footsteps grew closer, stopped outside the office door. The handle turned. Tad had 3 seconds to decide. Fight or hide. He chose neither. Stepped behind the door as it swung open, pressed himself against the wall, barely breathing. A woman entered. She reached for the light switch, then she saw the open safe. She screamed. Tad moved fast. covered her mouth with his hand, pulled her away from the door, kicked it shut. "Don't scream," he whispered urgently. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help Celeste." The woman's eyes were wide with terror. Then something changed. The fear shifted, became something else. Recognition. "You're the man from next door," she breathed when he released her mouth. "Margaret Brennan's son." Yes. She looked at the safe, at the documents still visible inside, at Tad's camera. Understanding dawned slowly across her face. "You're here for evidence," she said. It wasn't a question. "Mrs. Coldwell, I can explain." "Catherine." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears were streaming down her face. "My name is Catherine, and you don't need to explain anything." She walked to the desk on trembling legs, sat down heavily in her husband's chair, looked at the open safe like she was seeing it for the first time. "I've known for 12 years, she whispered. Tad stayed silent. Let her speak. "I saw Ingrid's bruises, found her crying in the garden shed. She begged me to help her. And Catherine's voice cracked. "I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself she was an illegal who knew the risks. I told myself Harrison was under stress, that he didn't mean it." She looked up at Tad. Her face was ravaged. "But he did mean it. He meant every bit of it. And when Ingrid disappeared, I knew. I knew, and I still said nothing. Why, because I was afraid. The admission seemed to cost her everything. Afraid of losing this house, this life. Afraid of what people would say. Afraid of being alone." She laughed bitterly. "I've been alone for 32 years anyway. Married to a monster and too much of a coward to do anything about it." "Mrs. Coldwell." "Catherine." She stood, walked to the safe, looked at the ledger, the passports, the evidence of her husband's crimes. "He's going to kill her, Celeste. After tonight, he's taking her to the mountain property. No one ever comes back from there." "I know." "Then stop him." She turned to face Tad. Her eyes were clear now, determined. "Please, stop him before another woman dies because I was too afraid to act." "I need you to do something for me," Tad said carefully. "Anything. Go back to the party. Act normal. Don't let anyone know anything is wrong." Catherine nodded slowly. "And tomorrow morning, the FBI will be here. Agent Lorelei Finch. When she shows up, tell her everything. Every detail you've seen over the past 12 years. Every woman, every bruise, every scream you pretended not to hear. Will that be enough? To convict him?" "Yes." Catherine wiped her eyes, drew herself up. The society wife's mask slipped back into place, but something had changed underneath. A strength that came from finally choosing a side. "Good," she said. "I've been waiting for someone to destroy him for a very long time." She turned and walked out without looking back. Tad waited until her footsteps faded. Then he finished photographing the safe's contents, restored everything to its original position, and closed it. Hung the painting back in place. Wiped down every surface he had touched. He made it to the service entrance without incident. Slipped out into the night. Crossed back to his property as the fundraiser continued behind him, oblivious. Maverick was waiting on the porch. The dog's tail wagged once when Tad appeared. Mission complete. Inside, Tad uploaded the photographs to an encrypted cloud storage. Sent Agent Finch an email with the access codes. Subject line: "Everything you need." His phone buzzed 30 seconds later. "Finch. Jesus Christ, Brennan. This is enough for warrants across 4 states. I'm mobilizing now." He was about to respond when Maverick's bark shattered the quiet. Not his normal alert bark. Something urgent. Panicked. Tad ran to the back door. Through the window, he could see lights flooding the Colwell garden. And he could hear it. Pippa's yelp, sharp with pain. Then Celeste's scream cut brutally short, and Harrison Coldwell's voice carrying clearly through the night air. "I warned you about talking to strangers, Celeste. I warned you what would happen." Tad's blood turned to ice. He was already moving, but he knew with sickening certainty that he might be too late. Whatever was happening behind that hedge was happening now, and all the evidence in the world wouldn't matter if Celeste didn't survive the night. He vaulted the fence in one fluid motion. Maverick cleared it half a second behind him. The sound of Pippa's cries guided them through the darkness, each yelp a knife twisting in Tad's chest. He rounded the garden shed and stopped. Harrison Coldwell stood in a pool of light from the back porch. Tuxedo jacket, discarded sleeves rolled up. One hand gripped Pippa by the scruff of her neck, the small dog yelping and struggling. The other hand held a garden spade raised like a weapon. Celeste was on her knees in the grass, blood streaming from a cut above her eye. She reached toward Pippa, sobbing. "Please, Mr. Coldwell, Please, I wasn't talking to him. I was just collecting branches. I swear. You're lying. Coldwell's voice was calm, conversational. That made it worse. I've been watching you for days, Celeste. Did you think I was stupid? Did you think my cameras didn't see you whispering at the fence line? I wasn't. Don't. He tightened his grip on Pippa. The dog screamed. Don't insult my intelligence. I gave you everything. A home, food, protection, and this is how you repay me by conspiring with strangers. I wasn't conspiring. You just what? Thought you could escape like Ingrid. Coldwell laughed softly. You know what happened to Ingrid, Celeste. You know what happens to ungrateful girls who forget their place. Tad stepped out of the shadows. Let the dog go. Coldwell's head snapped toward him. For a fraction of a second, surprise flickered across his face. Then it smoothed into contempt. Ah, the neighbor. His eyes traveled over Tad, dismissive. Margaret Brennan's boy, the soldier playing at civilian life. I said let the dog go. Or what? Coldwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. You'll call the police. Sheriff Hutchins is inside my house right now, drinking my wine. You'll report me to whom? He tilted his head. I own this town, Mr. Brennan. I own everyone in it. Tad moved closer. Maverick's hackles rose, a deep snarl forming in his throat. I'm not going to report you, Tad said quietly. I'm going to stop you. Stop me, Coldwell seemed genuinely amused. You're trespassing on my property, threatening me in front of a witness. I could have you arrested in 5 minutes. You could try. Something shifted in Coldwell's expression. The amusement faded. He was reassessing the threat, calculating. Celeste, Coldwell said, without looking at her. Go inside, now. Celeste didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on Tad, wide with terror and something else. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope that someone had finally come. Celeste. Coldwell's voice hardened. I won't ask again. She's not going anywhere, Tad said. And neither are you. The standoff stretched. Pippa whimpered in Coldwell's grip. Maverick's body tensed, ready to strike. Then Coldwell made his move. He hurled Pippa at Tad, using the distraction to swing the spade at his head. Tad caught the dog, twisting to avoid the blow. The spade whistled past his ear, close enough to feel the wind of its passage. Maverick launched himself at Coldwell. 80 pounds of trained military working dog hit the man square in the chest. Coldwell went down hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. The spade flew from his hand, clattering across the flagstones. Maverick's jaws clamped onto Coldwell's forearm, not biting through. Holding, controlling, exactly as he had been trained to do 100 times in combat. Coldwell screamed, Call him off! Call him off! Tad set Pippa down gently. The small dog limped immediately to Celeste, who gathered her into her arms, crying. Maverick, hold, Tad said. His voice was calm, flat. The shepherd maintained his grip, but didn't increase pressure. Coldwell lay pinned, his face contorted with pain and rage. You're making a mistake, Coldwell hissed. A terrible mistake. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do to you? Tad crouched beside him, close enough that Coldwell could see his eyes. I know exactly who you are. I know about Ingrid Larson, Katerina Volkov, Alessandra Romano. I know about the ledger in your safe, the passports, the photographs. He paused. I know about the disposals. For the first time, real fear flickered in Coldwell's eyes. You broke into my house. I found evidence of human trafficking, forced labor, and what looks a lot like murder. The FBI will be very interested. The FBI, Coldwell laughed, but it was thin now, desperate. Do you have any idea how many federal judges owe me favors? How many prosecutors have taken my campaign donations? I'm sure Agent Lorelei Finch will be fascinated to hear about that too. The name hit Coldwell like a physical blow. His face went white. Finch, the word came out strangled. You contacted Finch. She's expecting my call tonight. Coldwell's composure cracked completely. Listen to me. Listen, we can make a deal. Whatever you want. Money, property, I can make you rich. I can make all of this go away. Like you made Ingrid go away. I didn't. Coldwell's voice rose. You don't understand. These women, they're nobody. Illegals. They came here knowing the risks. I gave them opportunities they never would have had otherwise. You enslaved them. I employed them. You beat them. You imprisoned them. You threatened their families. Tad leaned closer. And when they tried to escape, you made them disappear. Where are they, Coldwell? Where did you put them? I want a lawyer. You'll get one after you answer my question. I have nothing to say to you. Behind them, the back door burst open. But it wasn't Sheriff Hutchins who emerged. Deputy Knox Patterson stepped out, gun drawn. Young, idealistic, 29 years old with clear eyes and a conscience that hadn't been bought yet. Chief Brennan, Patterson's voice was uncertain. Sir, we got a call about a disturbance. Coldwell's relief was palpable. Deputy, thank God, this man attacked me. He broke into my house. Arrest him immediately. Patterson looked at the scene. Tad standing calmly, Maverick pinning Coldwell, Celeste bleeding in the grass with Pippa in her arms. Mr. Coldwell, I need you to calm down. Can someone tell me what's happening here? Before anyone could respond, Sheriff Warren Hutchins appeared, gun drawn, face flushed. He took in the scene with the calculating eyes of a man who had spent 30 years reading situations and choosing sides based on power. Brennan, Hutchins said slowly, what's going on? Harrison Coldwell was assaulting this woman when I intervened, Tad said, his voice steady. I have evidence he's been running a human trafficking operation for over a decade. That's a lie, Coldwell shouted. He's trespassing. He attacked me without provocation. Hutchins looked at Coldwell, then at Tad, then at Celeste, whose blood was visible even in the dim light. The sheriff's calculation was almost visible. Loyalty to the man who paid his salary or survival. Deputy Patterson, Hutchins said, finally, his voice careful. Radio for an ambulance. We have an injured woman. Sir, do it, now. Patterson hesitated, then complied. As he spoke into his radio, Hutchins holstered his weapon and walked closer to Coldwell. Warren Coldwell said. His voice had an edge of panic now. You work for me. I paid for everything. Your campaign, your... Mr. Coldwell, Hutchins interrupted. His voice was tired. I'm going to need you to stop talking. Coldwell's eyes widened. What? You just assaulted a woman in front of multiple witnesses, one of whom is a decorated Navy SEAL. Hutchins looked at Tad. The FBI has been contacted. Agent Lorelei Finch. She has evidence of a multi-state trafficking operation. The sheriff flinched. Not surprise. Recognition. He knew that name. Knew what it meant. Then this is above my pay grade, Hutchins said quietly. He looked at Patterson. Deputy, read Mr. Coldwell his rights. What? Coldwell struggled against Maverick's hold. The dog adjusted his grip, eliciting a yelp of pain. You can't be serious, Warren. We had a deal. I own you. We had a deal, Hutchins agreed. His voice was flat. And I'm going to have to live with that, but I'm not going to jail for you. He paused. Maverick, was it? Can you release him? Tad nodded. Maverick, release. The shepherd released Coldwell's arm and stepped back, positioning himself beside Tad. His amber eyes remained fixed on Coldwell, watchful, ready. As Patterson cuffed Coldwell, the man's mask shattered completely. You'll regret this, all of you. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, connections. I'll destroy every single one of you. Save it for the judge, Patterson said, hauling him to his feet. They led Coldwell away. His voice echoed across the garden, threats and promises fading into the distance. Tad turned to Celeste. She was still on the ground, clutching Pippa, her whole body shaking. Hey, he said, gently crouching beside her. It's over. You're safe now. She looked at him with eyes that couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. He's really arrested. He's really going to jail. Yes. But his lawyers, his money, his connections won't help him. Not this time. Tad paused. I have everything, Celeste. The ledger, the passports, the records. The FBI will build a case he can't buy his way out of. Tears streamed down her face. Ingrid, the others. Do you know what happened to them? Tad hesitated. Not yet, but we'll find out. I promise. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed to Celeste, checking her injuries. One of them gently examined Pippa, who had stopped whimpering, but was clearly traumatized. As they loaded Celeste into the ambulance, she reached for Tad's hand. Come with me, please. I don't want to be alone. I'll be right behind you. I need to talk to the FBI. I'm first, but I won't leave you. She nodded, fresh tears spilling. Thank you. I don't know why you helped me. I don't know why you risked everything for someone you don't even know. But thank you. You can thank me later. Right now, just focus on getting better. The ambulance doors closed. Tad watched it pull away, sirens wailing into the night. Hutchins approached. His face was gray in the porch light. You know what you just did? He asked quietly. I stopped a crime in progress. You just destroyed the most powerful man in this county. Hutchins paused. And probably my career along with it. You made a choice, Tad said. The right one. Finally. The sheriff's jaw tightened. I knew. Not everything, but enough. I knew and I looked away because it was easier. He paused. I'm going to have to live with that. Yes, Tad said. You are. Hutchins nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked back to his patrol car. A man who had chosen survival over courage for too long and would spend the rest of his life knowing it. Agent Finch arrived 45 minutes later. She was in her early 40s, compact and intense, with sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. She wore a dark blazer over jeans, her badge clipped to her belt. Brennan, she said, extending her hand. Good work tonight. The victim did the work, Tad said. I just helped her be heard. Finch pulled out her phone, showed him a screen filled with warrant approvals. Baltimore, Richmond, Charlotte, Raleigh. Simultaneous raids at 0600. We're taking down the whole network. How many women? Based on your evidence, at least 13, maybe more. She looked at the Coldwell mansion. This is going to be Big Brennan, national news. You ready for that? I didn't do this for recognition. I know, but you're going to get it anyway. She paused. The victim, Celeste. Will she testify? Ask her, not me. It's her choice, Finch nodded. Fair enough. She turned toward her vehicle, then paused. One more thing, there's a cabin. Mountain property registered to Coldwell. We're sending a forensics team in the morning. Tad's stomach tightened. You think that's where the bodies are? I think we're going to find out. Her expression was grim. Get some rest, Brennan. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She drove away. Tad stood alone in the darkness. Maverick pressed against his leg. Ranger sat beside him, calm now that the threat was neutralized, waiting for the next order, the next mission. Come on, boy, Tad said. Let's go home. They walked back through the gap in the hedge, back to the modest house that had belonged to his mother, back to the life he was still trying to figure out how to live. Behind them, the Coldwell mansion blazed with lights. Police vehicles filled the driveway. Crime scene tape cordoned off the garden. And somewhere in federal detention, Harrison Coldwell was beginning to understand that all his money and power couldn't save him from what was coming. Justice, slow and patient and absolutely certain, had finally arrived. At 1:17 in the morning, Tad's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. Brennan? Mr. Brennan. A woman's voice, young, scared. My name is Alessandro Romano. Pastor Harding said you arrested Harrison Coldwell. He said it's finally safe to come forward. Tad sat up straight. Alessandro Romano, you're alive. I escaped 26 months ago. I've been hiding ever since. Her voice cracked. But Father Harding said you have evidence. He said Coldwell is really going to jail this time. He is, I promise you. Then I need to see you tonight. There are others. Women in Baltimore, Richmond, Charlotte. I know where they are. I know who's holding them. She paused. If Coldwell is really finished, we can save them. All of them. Where are you, Barham? 3 blocks from your house. I've been watching, waiting to see if it was safe. Tad stood. Come to the front door. I'll be waiting. 10 minutes later, Alessandra Romano sat in Tad's living room. She was 31 but looked older, thin, exhausted. The kind of tired that came from 26 months of looking over her shoulder, sleeping in shelters, trusting no one. Celeste had been released from the hospital by then. She emerged from the guest room when she heard voices, stopped in the doorway, hand flying to her mouth. Alessandra. Celeste. Alessandra's eyes filled with tears. You're alive. You got out. They fell into each other's arms, 2 survivors of the same nightmare. 2 women who had thought they would die, invisible and forgotten. I thought you were dead, Celeste whispered. He told me you were transferred. I thought it was a lie. It was a lie, but not the lie you thought. Alessandra pulled back, wiping her eyes. He didn't kill me. He sold me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sold you to him? Tad asked carefully. Alessandra nodded. To a man named Marcus Whitfield. Real estate developer in Baltimore. He runs the same operation Coldwell does. Brings in women on work visas, lets them expire, traps them in fake debt. Her voice was steady now. Clinical. The only way to talk about horror without drowning in it. I was supposed to work for Whitfield the same way I worked for Coldwell, but the night before the transfer, I escaped through the shed window. How many others? Tad asked. How many women did he sell? At least 9 that I know of. 3 went to Baltimore, 2 to Richmond, 4 to Charlotte. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I wrote down everything I remember. Names, addresses, the men who bought them. Tad took the paper. 4 names, 4 addresses. A network of predators operating in plain sight. Will you testify, he asked, in court under oath about everything Coldwell did? Alessandra met his gaze, unflinching. I've been waiting 26 months for someone to ask me that question. Yes, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. At 6 o'clock the next morning, the FBI moved. 4 cities, 4 simultaneous raids, coordinated to the second so that none of Coldwell's associates could warn the others. Tad watched the news coverage from his living room. Celeste beside him on the couch, Pippa in her lap, Alessandra in the armchair, hands clasped tight. The footage was chaotic. Baltimore agents in tactical gear breaching a townhouse door. 3 women let out blankets wrapped around their shoulders. Richmond, a suburban house, 2 women emerging into daylight. Charlotte, 4 women ages 23 to 38 rescued from a property disguised as a group home. By 9 o'clock, 13 women had been freed. Over the following weeks, as investigators traced the network deeper, the number climbed. 17 more in secondary locations. 12 from prior years, who finally felt safe enough to come forward. 5 from overseas operations that Coldwell's network had touched. 47 lives reclaimed from the darkness. The news anchors called it the largest trafficking bust in Virginia history. A 4-state operation dismantled in coordinated strikes. A network that had operated for 12 years, finally exposed. Celeste wept as she watched, not from sadness, from relief, from the understanding that she wasn't alone anymore. That 47 other women had been pulled from the same darkness that had almost consumed her. "They're free," she whispered. "They're really free." Agent Finch called at 11:47. Her voice was tight, professional, the tone people used when they were trying not to feel. "Brennan, we found the cabin." Tad's blood ran cold. "And forensics located remains, 2 sets, buried about 30 yards behind the structure." She paused. "DNA testing will take time, but based on the timeline and physical evidence, we believe one is Ingrid Larson. The other is Katerina Volkov." Celeste heard. Her hand flew to her mouth. A sound escaped her throat that wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite a hum, something in between. Tad moved to her side. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I'm sorry." She shook her head, tears streaming. I already knew. But knowing and knowing are different things." Her voice broke. "Anna was my friend, the only friend I had, and he murdered her." "We'll make sure her family knows," Finch said over the phone. "We'll bring her home, both of them." The DNA results confirmed it 6 days later. Ingrid Larson, age 27 at time of death. Katerina Volkov, age 31. Both had been dead for years. Both buried in shallow graves that were never meant to be found. Ingrid's mother flew in from Copenhagen. Margaret Larson was a small woman with white hair and eyes that had cried themselves empty long before she boarded the plane. She had spent 5 years wondering where her daughter was. 5 years hoping for a phone call that never came. 5 years that ended in a county morgue in Virginia, identifying remains through dental records because there wasn't enough left to see her daughter's face one last time. Pastor Harding conducted a small memorial service at St. Michael's. The chapel was packed. Celeste sat in the front row clutching a silver cross. Ingrid's cross. The one she had found in the garden shed and kept hidden for 2 years, knowing it meant her friend was dead, but unable to let go of the last piece of her. When it came time to speak, Celeste stood. Her hands shook. Her voice broke. But she spoke. "Anna taught me how to survive," she said. Quiet but clear. "She taught me to be invisible when I needed to be. To endure when endurance was all I had left. She tried to escape so I would know not to try. She died so I could learn what happens to girls who run." She paused, looked at the simple urn that held what was left of her friend. "She was brave when I was terrified. She was kind when the world had given her every reason to be cruel. And she deserves so much more than what he gave her." Celeste's voice broke completely. "I'm alive because Anna showed me how to survive. And I promise her that I will make that life mean something." Margaret Larson wept in the front pew. When the service ended, she approached Celeste, took her hands. "Thank you," she whispered in accented English, "for remembering her, for keeping her cross safe, for making sure she didn't die alone and forgotten." They held each other, 2 women bound by grief, by survival, by the ghost of a girl who had tried to be free. After the service, Margaret approached Tad. She was 73 years old, fragile as paper, but her grip was surprisingly strong when she took his hand. "You found my daughter," she said. "You gave me the truth, even though the truth breaks me." "I'm sorry I couldn't save her," Tad said. "You saved the others. You saved 47 others." Tears ran down her weathered cheeks. Ingrid would want that. She would want to know her death meant something, that it stopped him before he could hurt more girls. She reached into her purse, pulled out a photograph. Ingrid at 18 smiling full of hope before she came to America. Before she learned what monsters looked like. This is who she was, Margaret said. Remember her this way, not how you found her. Tad took the photograph. I will. I promise. The trial was set for mid-September. 6 months to build a case strong enough to withstand the defense that Harrison Coldwell's money could buy. Prosecutor Vivian Ashcroft was a woman in her late 40s with 23 years at the DA's office and a reputation for never backing down. She met with Celeste and Alessandra in a conference room that smelled like coffee and determination. Here's what we're facing, Ashcroft said, spreading files across the table. Harrison Coldwell has hired Thornton Lancaster, best defense attorney on the East Coast, $950 an hour, 87% win rate. She paused. He's going to come at you hard, both of you. He's going to paint you as opportunists seeking immigration benefits. He's going to question your credibility, your memory, your motives. And what do we do, Celeste asked. You tell the truth, simply, clearly, without embellishment. Ashcroft looked at her steadily. The truth is powerful enough. You don't need to make it more dramatic. Just tell them what happened. Over the next 6 months, they prepared. Celeste worked with a victim advocate, learning how to testify without being re-traumatized. She obtained her T-visa legal status for trafficking survivors. She started therapy processing 4 years of abuse in 45-minute sessions that left her exhausted and raw, but somehow stronger. Alessandra did the same. So did the 13 women rescued from Baltimore, Richmond, and Charlotte. A chorus of voices preparing to speak truth to power. Catherine Coldwell filed for divorce, moved into a small apartment across town, started meeting with prosecutors providing insider testimony about 12 years of crimes she had witnessed and ignored. Sheriff Warren Hutchins resigned 3 days after Coldwell's arrest. A federal investigation into his conduct cleared him of criminal conspiracy, but destroyed his career. The investigation found years of willful blindness, reports filed and ignored, complaints that never went anywhere, a pattern of choosing power over duty. He moved to Tennessee 2 months later, a broken man who had learned too late that complicity has a price. Deputy Knox Patterson became acting sheriff. At 29, he was the youngest in county history. His first act was establishing a human trafficking task force, training for all officers on recognizing signs of servitude, direct lines to federal agencies that couldn't be bought, a promise that Ridgemont would never look away again. In separate trials across 4 states, Coldwell's associates fell like dominoes. Marcus Whitfield received life without parole in Baltimore. Gregory Nash, 30 years in Richmond. The others followed justice delivered in courtrooms from Charlotte to Raleigh. The network dismantled piece by piece. September arrived with the weight of inevitability. The courthouse was packed. Media from across the country, cameras everywhere. This wasn't just a trial, it was a reckoning. Harrison Coldwell sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, hair perfectly styled, face composed, the mask back in place. But Tad could see the cracks, the tremor in his hands, the tightness around his eyes, the knowledge that all his money might not be enough this time. Thornton Lancaster sat beside him, silver-haired, distinguished, the kind of lawyer who made juries doubt their own certainty. Judge Patricia Hendricks entered, 71 years old, 36 years on the bench. She had seen everything. Her face was stern as she looked at the packed courtroom. This trial, she said, will be conducted with decorum and respect for the victims, for the process, for justice itself. Celeste was called first. She walked to the witness stand on trembling legs, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Then she began. She told them about coming to America in 2020, about the promises Coldwell made, about the first year when everything seemed legitimate, about the day her visa expired and he showed her the truth, the paperwork was never filed. She was illegal now, trapped. She told them about the debt that never decreased, the beatings that came without warning, the threats against her father, the isolation, the fear. Her voice shook but didn't break. Every word measured, every detail precise. When she finished her direct testimony, Thornton Lancaster stood, smoothed his tie, smiled like a shark sensing blood. Miss Moreau, he began, voice smooth as silk. You came to this country voluntarily, did you not? Yes. You signed a contract agreeing to work for Mr. Coldwell. Yes. And you received housing, food, medical care, a part of your compensation. Yes, but thank you, just yes or no, please. Lancaster paced in front of the jury, performing. Isn't it true, Miss Moreau, that you're testifying here today in order to receive a T-visa immigration benefits that allow you to remain in the United States? Celeste's jaw tightened. I'm testifying because, yes or no, are you receiving immigration benefits as a result of this testimony? Yes. So you have a clear incentive to cooperate with the prosecution, don't you? I have an incentive to tell the truth. Your truth, which conveniently includes claims that can't be verified. Lancaster's voice hardened. You say Mr. Coldwell beat you, but you never went to a hospital, never filed a police report, never told anyone until 8 months ago. Isn't that correct? I was afraid, and yes or no? Yes. Lancaster nodded, like he had just won something. No further questions. The courtroom murmured. Some of the jury looked uncertain. This was the game Lancaster played. Plant doubt. Make the victim seem unreliable. Win not by proving innocence, but by creating reasonable uncertainty. Ashcroft stood for redirect. Miss Moreau, why didn't you go to the hospital when you were injured? Because Mr. Coldwell controlled everything. My movements, my time, my access to help. He threatened that if I spoke to anyone, my father would have an accident. Celeste's voice was steady now, clear. I stayed silent because I was trying to keep my father alive. And why are you speaking now? Celeste looked directly at the jury. 12 faces, 12 strangers who held her life and Coldwell's fate in their hands. Because Ingrid Larson tried to escape, the sheriff brought her back. And then Mr. Coldwell murdered her and buried her in the mountains. Her voice didn't waver. I'm testifying because no one should die the way she died. Because silence enables monsters. Because if I don't speak, who will speak for Anna, for Katerina, for all the women who can't speak for themselves anymore? Not a sound, not a breath. Ashcroft let the words settle. Then, no further questions, Your Honor. Alessandra testified next. Then 3 women from Baltimore, 2 from Richmond, 4 from Charlotte, each one telling the same story with different details. A pattern of predation so consistent it couldn't be coincidence. The defense tried the same tactics. Questioned their credibility, their motives, suggested they were coordinating their stories. But the sheer number of voices, the consistency of the horror, the documentary evidence that corroborated every claim, the wall of lies was crumbling. Then Catherine Coldwell was called. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Coldwell's face went white. He leaned over to whisper urgently to Lancaster, who shook his head. Nothing to be done. She had immunity. She was going to testify. Catherine walked to the stand with her head high. She wore a simple gray dress. No jewelry, no makeup, just a woman who had finally decided to tell the truth. Mrs. Coldwell, Ashcroft began gently, how long were you married to Harrison Coldwell? 32 years. And during that time, what did you observe regarding his treatment of household staff? Catherine took a breath. I observed abuse, systematic, deliberate abuse designed to control vulnerable women. Her voice was steady. I saw bruises. I heard screams. I found blood in the garden shed where Ingrid Larson had been beaten. And what did you do? The question hung in the air. Catherine closed her eyes briefly. Nothing. I did nothing. Why not? Because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my lifestyle. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of being alone. She opened her eyes. They were wet. I told myself it wasn't my business. That these women were illegals who knew the risks. I told myself Harrison was under stress, that he didn't mean it. She looked directly at her husband. But he did mean it. Every bit of it. When Ingrid disappeared, I knew what had happened. I knew, and I stayed silent. Mrs. Coldwell, let me finish. Catherine's voice cracked. For 12 years, I watched my husband destroy lives. I saw Ingrid's terror. I heard Katerina's pleas for help. I watched Alessandra vanish overnight. And I said nothing because it was easier than being brave. She turned to the jury. I'm here now because I can't live with that silence anymore. Because those women deserve better. Because my comfort was not worth their lives. The courtroom was absolutely silent. When she finished 3 hours later, having detailed every incident, every woman, every moment of willful blindness, Lancaster tried to discredit her. Isn't it true, Mrs. Coldwell, that you're testifying against your husband as part of a plea deal to avoid prosecution yourself? Yes. So you have every reason to lie, to paint him in the worst possible light to save yourself. I have every reason to lie, Catherine agreed. But I'm not lying. I'm finally telling the truth. And the truth is that I enabled a monster for 12 years because I cared more about my reputation than human lives. Lancaster had no response to that. Raw honesty delivered without excuse. It was devastating in its simplicity. Then Ashcroft played the recording. "What is this?" the judge asked. "Audio recording made by Catherine Coldwell 3 months before Mr. Coldwell's arrest, Your Honor. Mrs. Coldwell secretly recorded a conversation in her husband's office." The recording played, clear, unmistakable. Coldwell's voice. "If Celeste keeps asking questions, we'll do what we did with Katerina. The mountains are quiet this time of year. No one ever looks that deep into the woods." The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Coldwell's mask shattered completely. He started to stand, Lancaster pulling him back down, whispering urgently. But it was over. Everyone in that room knew it. The recording was a confession. The kind of evidence that no amount of money or legal skill could overcome. Tad testified on day 9. Described what he had witnessed. The abuse, the rescue, the evidence in the safe. Lancaster tried to paint him as a vigilante who had broken into private property. "Isn't it true, Chief Brennan, that you illegally entered Mr. Coldwell's home?" "I entered through a service entrance to gather evidence of ongoing crimes. Without a warrant, without legal authority. The FBI obtained their own warrant based on victim testimony and conducted their own search. Everything they found corroborated what I photographed." "But you broke the law." "I did what was necessary to save a woman's life. If I had to do it again, I would." The jury seemed to appreciate the honesty. A soldier who broke rules to save lives. It played better than Lancaster wanted. The jury deliberated for 5 hours and 22 minutes. They returned at 4:37 in the afternoon on a Thursday in late September. The foreman was a woman in her 60s, a retired teacher who had sat through 3 weeks of testimony with the same expression, attentive, sorrowful, resolute. "On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Ingrid Larson, how do you find guilty?" Coldwell's shoulders hunched. "On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Katerina Volkov, how do you find guilty? On the charges of human trafficking, how do you find a guilty or on all counts? 47 charges total, 47 guilty verdicts, each one hitting Coldwell like a physical blow, his face gray, his hands trembling, the mask finally completely destroyed. The courtroom remained silent, waiting. "On the charges of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find guilty?" It continued. "Debt servitude, forced labor, witness tampering, fraud." 47 times the word guilty echoed through the courtroom. When it was over, Coldwell sat motionless, staring at nothing. A man who had believed his wealth made him untouchable, learning that he was wrong. Sentencing came 4 weeks later. Coldwell wore prison orange this time, handcuffed, diminished. A monster revealed as just a man after all. Judge Hendricks was 71 years old. She had seen everything in 36 years on the bench, but her voice still shook with anger when she spoke. "Harrison Coldwell," she began, "you have been found guilty of some of the most heinous crimes I have encountered in 3 decades as a judge." She paused, let the words settle. "You exploited vulnerable women for profit. You trapped them through fraud and coercion. You subjected them to years of physical and psychological abuse. And when 2 of them tried to escape, you murdered them and buried them in the wilderness like they were garbage to be disposed of." Her eyes were hard, unyielding. "You believed your wealth placed you above the law. You believed your connections made you immune to consequence. You believed that because these women were foreign, were undocumented, were poor, that their lives didn't matter." She leaned forward. "You believed wrong." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "I sentence you to 6 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. You will die in federal prison, Mr. Coldwell. And I hope that in whatever years remain to you, you find time to contemplate the lives you destroyed, the families you devastated, the women whose only crime was believing in the American dream you perverted into a nightmare." She brought the gavel down. Final. Absolute. Coldwell was led away. He didn't look at anyone, didn't speak. Just shuffled out in chains, a broken man facing a future measured in concrete and razor wire, an endless, echoing silence. Outside the courthouse, Celeste stood with Tad and Alessandra. Media swarmed, questions shouted, cameras flashing, but Celeste didn't see them. She was looking at the sky, at the autumn leaves falling like golden rain, at the world she had been invisible in for 4 years, but could finally see again. "It's really over," she whispered. "He's really gone." "He's gone," Tad confirmed. "He can't hurt anyone ever again." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. "Thank you for everything, for seeing when everyone else looked away, for believing me when I could barely believe myself." for giving me my life back." "You gave yourself your life back," Tad said. "You found the courage to speak. That's what made the difference." 8 months later, the Ingrid Larson Foundation opened its doors. The building stood on land seized from Colwell's estate through asset forfeiture. $80 million in frozen accounts had been liquidated. Combined with a $40 million donation from Catherine Colwell's divorce settlement, it was enough to create something that would endure. A shelter for trafficking survivors. A safe house. A place where women who had escaped modern slavery could find safety, support, and a path forward. Celeste stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony as the foundation's executive director. She had completed a 6-month training program, learned advocacy, trauma-informed care, immigration law, transformed her pain into purpose. Her father stood beside her. Jean-Luc Moreau had flown from Marseille for the opening. 71 years old, his Parkinson's symptoms managed with medication and the knowledge that his daughter was finally truly safe. He held Celeste's hand and wept with pride. "You did this," he whispered in French. "From such darkness, you built light." Tad was there too, security director for the foundation, salary of $67,000 a year, the exact amount of Celeste's fabricated debt. Symbolic, intentional, a way of reclaiming what had been stolen. Maverick had his own role. Therapy dog, the German shepherd who had once served in combat now served in healing. Walking the halls of the shelter, letting survivors pet his scarred hide, showing them that broken things could still protect, could still serve, could still love. Pastor Harding blessed the building. "May this place be a sanctuary for the wounded. May it offer hope to the hopeless and healing to the broken. May everyone who enters here know they are not forgotten." The doors opened. The first residents moved in. 3 women from the Baltimore Rescue, 2 from Richmond, 4 from Charlotte. The remaining survivors had chosen different paths. Some returned home to rebuild with family. Others relocated to cities where anonymity offered its own form of healing. But all stayed connected, a network of survivors supporting those still finding their way out. That evening, Tad sat on the shelter's back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that had no names. Maverick dozed at his feet, graying muzzle resting on paws that had carried him through 3 deployments and one final mission that mattered more than all the others combined. Celeste emerged from the building, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She sat beside him, handed him one, and they sat in comfortable silence. 12 women this month, she said finally. 12 women who have a place to sleep without fear, food without price, help without conditions. Ingrid would be proud. "I hope so." Celeste was quiet for a moment. "I think about her every day, about what she went through, what she fought for." She paused. "She tried to escape so I could learn what not to do. She died so I could live, and now I have to make that mean something." "You are making it mean something." A car pulled up to the shelter entrance. A woman got out, young, maybe 25, Hispanic features, trembling. A volunteer met her at the door, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, guided her inside. "That's the 13th this month," Celeste said softly. 13th woman who thought she was alone, who thought no one cared, who thought she would die invisible and forgotten. She stood. "I should go welcome her. Let her know she's safe now." Tad watched her walk back inside, watched her greet the new arrival with gentleness and understanding that only came from shared experience. Watched her offer hope to someone who had forgotten what hope looked like. His phone buzzed, a text from Agent Finch. Final count across the network: 47 women rescued, 8 traffickers convicted. "You started something bigger than you know, Brennan." Tad stared at the number. 47, each one a life, a daughter, a sister, a woman who had been trapped and was now free. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. Somewhere out there, more women were trapped. More monsters were operating. More victims were waiting for someone to care enough to look. But it was a start. Maverick lifted his head, looked at Tad with those amber eyes that had seen too much, but still chose to believe in the mission, still chose to protect. "Yeah, boy," Tad said quietly. "I know. The fight's not over. It would never be over. As long as predators existed, as long as greed and cruelty flourished in the shadows, the fight would continue. But tonight, 47 women were free. Tonight, a shelter stood where a monument to evil had once loomed. Tonight, Ingrid Larson's name lived on in stone and purpose, instead of being forgotten in an unmarked grave. Tonight was enough. Celeste's voice drifted through the open door, speaking to the new arrival in gentle tones, offering safety, offering hope, offering the same chance that Tad and Maverick and Pastor Harding and 46 other survivors had offered her. the cycle of protection continuing, multiplying, spreading light into places that had only known darkness. Tad stood, stretched, felt the ache in his shoulder from the old injury that would never fully heal, felt the weight of missions past and missions future. But he also felt something he hadn't felt in years, something that had been missing since Helmand Province, since the decision that haunted him, since the teammates who were injured because of a call he made. Peace, not the absence of struggle, not the end of the fight, but the understanding that this thing mattered. This was what he had been trained for. Not to wage war in distant countries, but to stand guard over the vulnerable closer to home. He walked inside, into the warmth and light of the Ingrid Larson Foundation, into a building that had been purchased with blood money and transformed into something holy. In the common room, Celeste was showing the new arrival where she would sleep. The woman was crying, not from fear anymore, from relief, from the understanding that she had finally found sanctuary. "You're safe here," Celeste said, speaking from experience, speaking truth. "No one will hurt you, no one will control you. You're free now, and we're going to help you stay free." The woman nodded, unable to speak, but her eyes said everything. Tad stood in the doorway, witness to a moment of grace, a moment when darkness gave way to light, when captivity transformed into freedom. This was what victory looked like. Not explosions and medals and ticker tape parades, just one woman helping another. One survivor offering hope to someone still finding their way out of hell. Maverick padded over to the new arrival. The woman flinched, then slowly, carefully reached out her hand. The dog sniffed it, then gently, so gently licked her fingers. She laughed, a sound of pure surprise. Maybe the first genuine laughter she had made in months or years. "He's a good boy," Celeste said softly. "Saved my life." "Saved a lot of lives." The woman scratched Maverick's ears. The dog leaned into her touch-tail, wagging slowly, showing her that trust was possible again. That gentleness still existed in the world. Tad felt his throat tighten, turned away before anyone could see. He walked to the shelter's office, sat down at the desk that was his now, looked at the photograph on the wall, Ingrid Larson at 18, smiling, full of hope. The photograph her mother had given him at the memorial service. This is who she was. Remember her this way. "I will," Tad whispered to the empty office. "I promise." His phone buzzed again. This time it was Pastor Harding. "Just arrived," another woman. "Guatemalan, same story. Can you help Tad type back? Send her to the foundation, we have room." He stood, walked back out into the common area. Celeste had finished settling the new arrival and was heading toward the kitchen. "Another one coming," Tad said. "Guatemalan woman, Pastor Harding just called." Celeste nodded, not surprised, not overwhelmed, just determined. "I'll prepare a room." She walked past him, then paused, turned back. "Tad, yeah, that thing you asked me months ago about whether I regretted trusting you." She smiled, small but real. "I don't. I've never regretted it for a second." She went to prepare the room. Tad looked around the shelter, at the safe spaces they had created, at the survivors helping new arrivals, at Maverick sleeping peacefully in the corner, his war finally over, at the life they were building from the ashes of what Harrison Coldwell had tried to destroy. He thought about his mother, about the house she had left him, about the decision to move to Ridgemont that had seemed like an ending but turned out to be a beginning. He thought about Helmand Province, about the extraction that went wrong, about the guilt that had eaten at him for months. "You made the right call," his COO had said. Sometimes right calls have wrong outcomes, but sometimes Tad realized right calls have right outcomes. Sometimes you make the decision to act and lives are saved instead of lost. Sometimes you stand up when it would be easier to sit down and the world becomes a little less dark. Sometimes being ordinary was exactly what the world needed most. Ordinary people who refused to look away. Ordinary people who stood up. Ordinary people who said, "Not on my watch." Tad walked to the window, looked out at the Ridgemont streets, at the town that had harbored a monster for 12 years, at the community that was learning slowly, painfully to be better. His phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then changed his mind. "Brennan. Mr. Brennan," a young woman's voice, shaking, scared. "My name is Sophia. I'm in Richmond. I saw the news about the Ingrid Larson Foundation. I saw what you did, and I need help. Please, I need help." Tad closed his eyes, took a breath, opened them. "Tell me where you are," he said. "We're on our way." He hung up, called Celeste, called Pastor Harding, mobilized the network they had built, the system of protection that would go get Sophia, That would bring her to safety. That would give her the same chance they had given 47 others. Because the fight wasn't over. Would never be over. But they were winning, one life at a time, one voice at a time, one woman at a time, and that was enough. Maverick stirred, lifted his head, ready. Yeah, boy, Tad said. One more. There's always one more. The dog stood, shook himself, walked to Tad's side. Together they walked toward the door, toward the car that would take them to Richmond, toward another woman who needed saving, toward the mission that would never end but was always worth fighting. Outside, the sun set completely. Darkness fell over Ridgemont, Virginia, but inside the Ingrid Larson Foundation, lights blazed. Warm, welcoming, a beacon for the lost. And somewhere in federal prison, Harrison Colwell lay in a cell and understood for the first time what it meant to be powerless, to be forgotten, to be nothing. While the women he had tried to erase built something beautiful from the ashes of what he destroyed. Justice wasn't always swift, but when it came, it was absolute. And grace, when given the chance, could transform even the darkest places into light.